The king's guard shouts at Karen. She complains to the police. How rude. She loved imagining what it would have been like to walk the halls of a palace, to hear the echo of footsteps on marble floors, or to see the royal guard standing in perfect formation. So, when she finally had a chance to visit one of the oldest and most famous castles in her country, she was overjoyed. She planned her trip meticulously, making sure she would have plenty of time to explore every corner, take photographs, and learn about the stories hidden in every stone. The morning of her visit was perfect. The sun shone brightly, and a soft breeze carried the scent of flowers from the castle gardens. Corinne woke early, packed her small backpack with water, a notebook, a camera, and some snacks, and set off for the castle with a mixture of excitement and curiosity. She had read that the castle attracted thousands of visitors every year, but she didn't mind. She loved being in the middle of a bustling crowd if it meant she could see the historic grounds and take in the atmosphere of something that had stood for hundreds of years. As she approached the castle, the tall stone walls rose majestically above her, casting long shadows across the cobblestone path. The towers seemed to touch the sky, and the intricate carvings on the walls hinted at centuries of artistry and craftsmanship. Karen stopped for a moment to look at the main gate, her eyes wide with admiration. She felt as though she had stepped back in time, transported into a world of knights, royalty, and grand ceremonies. The excitement in her chest grew stronger, and she hurried forward, eager to begin her exploration. Once inside the castle grounds, Karen found herself surrounded by history at every turn. The gardens were neatly trimmed, with rows of colorful flowers that seemed to glow in the sunlight. A fountain in the center sparkled as the water danced in the morning light. Visitors walked slowly, taking photographs and whispering to one another as they admired the beauty of the castle. Corinne wandered along the stone paths, stopping frequently to write notes in her notebook about the flowers, the layout of the gardens, and her impressions of the ancient architecture. The castle itself was a marvel. Its walls were thick and imposing, yet the windows were beautifully decorated with stained glass, showing scenes from battles, royal events, and local legends. Corinne spent a long time standing in front of one window, trying to make sense of the stories depicted in vibrant colors. She imagined the people who had lived here centuries ago, what they had worn, what they had eaten, and how they might have felt walking the same halls she was now exploring. Every detail fascinated her, from the carved wooden doors to the stone archways that led to hidden corridors. As she wandered further, Corinne noticed a group of visitors gathering near a section of the castle that seemed slightly off-limits. A small sign warned that the area was restricted and that only authorized personnel could enter. Corinne, curious as ever, walked closer, trying to peek over the low stone wall to see what lay beyond. She didn't intend to break any rules. She just wanted to get a better view of the castle's inner courtyard, which was said to be breathtaking. The courtyard, according to the guidebook she had read, contained a fountain surrounded by rare flowers, and it had been the place where kings and queens once held private ceremonies. Corinne's attention was so focused on the courtyard that she didn't immediately notice the tall, stern-looking guard approaching. He wore a crisp uniform with a shiny badge, and his expression was serious. The guard's role was clear. He was there to ensure the safety of the visitors and to protect the castle itself. As Corinne stepped a little closer to the restricted area, the guard suddenly shouted, "Excuse me, you cannot go any further." Startled, Corinne froze. She had not expected anyone to speak so loudly or so abruptly. The shout made her heart race, and she felt a wave of embarrassment. Other visitors nearby glanced at her curiously, and she immediately realized that she had drawn unwanted attention to herself. Corinne took a step back, raising her hand slightly to show that she had no intention of causing trouble. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to." The guard's stern expression did not soften. He continued to speak in a firm tone, repeating that the area was restricted and that she needed to move away immediately. Karen could feel her frustration rising. She understood the importance of rules and safety, but the way the guard had shouted at her seemed unnecessarily harsh. She felt as if she had been scolded in front of a crowd and it stung. Trying to calm herself, Karen decided to explain politely. "I wasn't trying to go past the line," she said, her voice steady but polite. "I just wanted to get a better look at the courtyard. I'll step back right away." She moved a few steps away from the restricted area, hoping the situation would end there. However, the guard's tone remained firm, and he continued to watch her closely. Karen realized that, although she had followed his instructions, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had been treated unfairly. She had come to the castle to enjoy herself, to learn, and to experience history, but this interaction had left her feeling upset and flustered. She took a deep breath and tried to focus on the gardens again, telling herself that perhaps the guard was just doing his job and didn't intend to be rude. Despite this, Karen found it difficult to enjoy the rest of the morning. Every time she turned a corner or stopped to admire a statue, she could feel the guard's eyes on her, making her self-conscious. She noticed other visitors watching the interaction as well, which only added to her discomfort. Karen had always been a confident person, but in that moment, she felt small and uncertain. As she walked toward a quieter part of the castle grounds, Karen began thinking about what she would do next. She didn't want to cause a scene, but she also didn't want to ignore what she felt was an inappropriate way of being treated. She considered speaking to the castle staff about the incident, but she wasn't sure if that would help. The guard's actions had been quick and strict, leaving little room for explanation in the moment. Karen decided to take a short break, sitting on a stone bench under a large oak tree. She pulled out her notebook and wrote down her feelings, trying to make sense of the situation. Writing always helped her process emotions, and she hoped that by putting her thoughts on paper, she could find a way to respond calmly rather than react impulsively. She described the castle, the gardens, the restricted area, and her encounter with the guard in detail, noting how it had made her feel embarrassed, frustrated, and upset all at once. While she was writing, Karen noticed a group of schoolchildren walking past, laughing and pointing at the statues. Their cheerful energy lifted her mood slightly. She realized that despite the incident, the castle was still beautiful, and there was much to see and enjoy. She decided to continue exploring, but planned to remain mindful of the rules, staying well within the areas open to visitors. Karen reminded herself that her visit was about learning and experiencing history, not about conflict or arguments. By the time the afternoon sun began to cast long shadows across the castle grounds, Karen had calmed down. She had wandered through several rooms, admired tapestries depicting historic battles, and even watched a short demonstration by the castle's historical reenactment team. Each moment reminded her why she had come, to be immersed in the stories of the past and to feel connected to history. Yet, the memory of the guard's shout lingered in the back of her mind, a reminder that even in beautiful places, unexpected challenges could arise. As she prepared to leave the castle later that day, Karen thought carefully about how she might address what had happened. She didn't want to overreact, but she also didn't want to dismiss her feelings. The incident had left her questioning how people in authority sometimes communicate, and how a single moment could impact someone's experience so strongly. She resolved to find a way to express her concerns in a calm and constructive manner. Walking away from the castle gates, Karen felt a mix of relief and lingering frustration. She had enjoyed the beauty, the history, and the atmosphere, but the encounter with the guard had reminded her that not every moment could be controlled. Life, she realized, was a combination of wonder and challenge, of excitement and disappointment, and part of growing up was learning to navigate both. She carried this thought with her as she stepped onto the cobblestone street outside. Ready for whatever the next part of her day would bring, Karen left the castle feeling a mixture of emotions. The grandeur of the historic walls and gardens had been impressive, but the memory of the guards shouting at her lingered like an unpleasant echo. She walked along the cobblestone streets surrounding the castle, trying to shake off the embarrassment and frustration. Each step seemed heavier than the last, as if the day's excitement had been overshadowed by that single moment. She paused at a small cafe near the castle gates. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the air, comforting her senses. Karen ordered a cup of tea and a slice of apple cake, hoping that the warmth and sweetness would soothe her frazzled nerves. She found a quiet table near the window and sat down, taking in the street view while her thoughts swirled. As she sipped her tea, Karen replayed the encounter over and over in her mind. She tried to understand the guard's perspective. Perhaps he had been trained to shout, to ensure that visitors stayed safe. Maybe he wasn't trying to be rude but was just following the rules strictly. Yet despite these logical explanations, she couldn't help feeling upset. The tone, the volume, and the suddenness of the shout had startled her, and she felt as though her dignity had been overlooked. Karen looked around the cafe, observing other visitors who were laughing, talking, and enjoying their day without any trouble. She wondered how many people had experienced similar moments with authority figures and had felt powerless or frustrated. Her curiosity and sense of fairness pushed her to consider taking action. She wanted to ensure that what she experienced didn't happen to others, and she wanted to make sure her voice was heard in a calm and responsible way. After finishing her tea, Karen pulled out her phone and began researching the proper way to report such incidents. She discovered that the castle had a visitor complaint system, but she also noticed that local police could handle situations where someone felt mistreated or threatened. Karen felt a sense of determination. She wasn't looking for conflict. She wanted acknowledgement and understanding. She wanted to express her feelings clearly, to explain what happened, and to ensure that the interaction with the guard was reviewed. Feeling a mix of nervousness and resolve, Karen dialed the non-emergency number for the local police. A friendly voice answered on the other end, and Karen carefully explained the situation. She described the guard, the location, the circumstances, and most importantly, how it had made her feel. She emphasized that she was not in danger, but she wanted the incident documented and addressed. The police officer listened attentively, asking a few clarifying questions about the exact time, the description of the guard, and the details of the restricted area. Karen appreciated the officer's patience and professionalism. It was comforting to know that her concern was being taken seriously, and that someone was willing to investigate the situation without judgment. After providing all the necessary details, she was told that an officer would visit the castle to speak with staff and the guard, and that she might be contacted later if further information was needed. Hanging up the phone, Karen felt a mix of relief and anticipation. She had taken action in a responsible way, yet she knew the situation might not be resolved immediately. While she appreciated the process, she also worried about how the guard would respond if he knew a complaint had been made. Would he feel unfairly judged? Would it create tension in the castle for other visitors? Karen tried to push these thoughts aside, reminding herself that she was only seeking fairness and understanding. She decided to take a short walk through the nearby park to clear her mind. The park was calm, with children playing on swings, elderly people feeding birds, and joggers passing by with determined steps. Karen focused on the simple pleasures around her, the sound of birds singing, the warmth of the sun on her skin, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. Nature had a way of soothing her spirit and helping her think more clearly. As she walked, Karen reflected on her own expectations. She realized that she had visited the castle with high hopes of enjoying a perfect day, free from interruptions or discomfort. The reality, however, had been different. Life, she thought, was often unpredictable. Even in beautiful and carefully managed places, misunderstandings could occur. This insight didn't erase her feelings, but it gave her perspective. She understood that while she could not control how others behaved, she could control how she responded. Corinne's thoughts soon turned to the idea of communication. She believed that misunderstandings often arose from lack of explanation or clarity. The guard had followed his duties, but perhaps if he had spoken in a calmer tone or provided a brief explanation, the situation might have felt less confrontational. Corinne made a mental note that if she ever worked in a position of authority, she would strive to balance firmness with kindness, clarity with respect. By mid-afternoon, Corinne felt ready to return home. She had a long journey ahead, and she wanted to reflect on the day in a more composed state of mind. As she prepared to leave the park, she noticed a small notice board with information about local history and community events. One of the flyers mentioned a workshop on communication skills and conflict resolution. Corinne smiled to herself, thinking it might be useful to attend someday. It seemed that the universe was giving her subtle lessons about patience, understanding, and the importance of expressing oneself clearly. Once she reached her apartment, Corinne unpacked her bag and set aside her notebook and camera. She made a cup of chamomile tea and sat by the window, looking out at the city skyline as the evening approached. She reflected on the castle visit and the incident with the guard. While the shout had caused initial embarrassment and frustration, she now saw it as an opportunity to learn. She had learned about her own reactions, about the importance of staying calm under pressure, and about the ways she could address concerns in a responsible manner. As night fell, Corinne prepared a brief written account of the incident. She included the time, the location, the guard's description, and her feelings during the encounter. Writing everything down helped her organize her thoughts and emotions. She intended to keep a copy for herself and possibly share it with the authorities if needed. She also wrote about the positive aspects of the day, the gardens, the architecture, and the historical insights. This exercise reminded her that one negative moment did not erase the enjoyment she had experienced. Corinne's mind wandered to the reactions of other visitors she had noticed during the incident. Some had looked surprised, others indifferent. She realized that everyone experiences moments like this differently, and that perception often shapes how we feel about events. She made a mental note to approach future situations with empathy, understanding that a strict tone might not always indicate personal hostility. The guard had been performing his duty, and while it felt rude in the moment, his intentions were likely focused on safety. Feeling tired but thoughtful, Corinne went to bed that night with a sense of quiet determination. She knew that the following day might involve further communication with the police or castle staff. She resolved to handle the situation with patience and clarity, expressing her perspective without anger or exaggeration. She understood that fairness did not mean confrontation, but it did mean standing up respectfully for one's feelings and experiences. The next morning, Corinne woke early with a renewed sense of purpose. She spent some time reviewing her notes, thinking about how she might explain the incident clearly if asked. She reminded herself to be factual, calm, and respectful, focusing on the event itself rather than letting emotions dictate her words. She also thought about the lessons she had learned, patience, observation, and the value of understanding others' perspectives. As she prepared for the day ahead, Corinne felt a sense of empowerment. Though she had been startled and embarrassed by the guard's shout, she had taken constructive steps to address it. She recognized that life was filled with moments that tested our patience, resilience, and ability to communicate. The incident at the castle, while unpleasant, had become a learning experience. It reminded her that she could face challenges with composure and take thoughtful action, rather than reacting impulsively or holding onto frustration. Corinne's resolve strengthened as she got ready for her next steps. She planned to visit the police station if needed, submit her written account, and follow up politely with the castle authorities. She knew that her approach could set an example for others, showing that complaints and concerns could be handled respectfully and responsibly. She felt proud of herself for choosing this path, rather than letting embarrassment or frustration take control. By the afternoon, Corinne felt ready to leave the topic for a moment and focus on lighter things. She took a walk through a nearby park, watched children playing, and smiled at families enjoying their day. She reflected on the small joys around her, the laughter, the sunshine, the simplicity of ordinary moments. These reflections reminded her that life was a balance of challenges and pleasures, and that even difficult experiences could provide valuable lessons. Corinne returned home in the evening, feeling calmer and more centered. She reviewed her notes one last time, making sure her written account was clear and factual. She felt confident that, when she shared it with the authorities, it would be understood as a sincere effort to communicate and resolve the situation. More than that, she felt proud of how she had handled herself, remaining calm, thoughtful, and determined, even when faced with an uncomfortable encounter. As she prepared for bed, Corinne felt a sense of closure for the day. The castle had offered beauty, history, and wonder, and the encounter with the guard had offered insight, reflection, and personal growth. She realized that every experience, positive or negative, had the potential to teach something valuable. With this mindset, she drifted into a peaceful sleep, ready to face whatever challenges or adventures the next day might bring. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains as Corinne awoke, feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced the day before. Her thoughts were still on the castle incident, but this time she felt more focused and determined. She understood that simply reflecting on the event wasn't enough. If she wanted to address the situation properly, she needed to take deliberate steps. Today, she decided, she would contact the police in person and provide her written account. After a quick breakfast, Corinne gathered her notes, her identification, and a folder containing her written description of the incident. She read through it carefully, checking that her words were clear and factual. She had described the castle, the guard, the restricted area, and most importantly, her feelings and reactions during the event. She had avoided exaggeration, focusing instead on what had actually happened. Corinne knew that clarity and honesty were her best tools. The walk to the police station was pleasant. The streets were quieter than she expected for a weekday morning, and the soft breeze carried the scent of nearby flowers from the parks and gardens. Corinne's mind wandered to the lessons she had learned so far. She realized that part of being treated unfairly, or feeling uncomfortable in a public situation, was about learning how to respond calmly and thoughtfully. Her experience at the castle had already taught her patience and observation, and today would teach her how to communicate her concerns effectively. Upon arriving at the police station, Corinne was greeted by a friendly receptionist. She explained that she had come to file a complaint about an incident at the castle the previous day. The receptionist listened carefully, noting down some details, and then directed Corinne to a small office where she would speak with an officer. The room was simple but welcoming, with a desk, a few chairs, and a large window letting in sunlight. Corinne took a seat, feeling a mixture of nerves and resolve. A uniformed officer entered the room shortly after and introduced himself politely. "Good morning, ma'am. I understand you'd like to report an incident. Please have a seat, and we'll take your statement." Corinne nodded and smiled, appreciating the calm and professional tone of the officer. She handed over her folder with the written account and began to speak. Corinne explained everything carefully, starting with her visit to the castle. She described her excitement about seeing the historic site, the beauty of the gardens, and the fascinating architecture. Then she moved to the incident itself, explaining how the guard had shouted at her when she approached a restricted area. She spoke about the guard's tone, the suddenness of his shout, and the embarrassment she felt in front of other visitors. She emphasized that she had followed the instructions promptly, but wanted the incident documented because it had left a strong impression on her. The officer listened attentively, occasionally nodding and jotting down notes. He asked clarifying questions. What time did the incident occur? Can you describe the guard? Were there other visitors around? Karen answered each question carefully, providing as much detail as she could remember. She described the guard's uniform, his approximate height, and his general demeanor. She also mentioned the number of visitors nearby, noting that some had seemed surprised by the loud shout. Once Karen finished her account, the officer explained the next steps. Thank you for sharing these details, ma'am. We will contact the castle administration and the guard involved. We may also review any security footage if it is available. The goal is not to punish anyone unfairly, but to ensure that procedures are followed and that visitor interactions are professional and respectful. We may contact you again if we need more information, but this is the first step in documenting and reviewing the incident. Karen felt a sense of relief. She had taken the first step toward addressing the situation responsibly, and it felt empowering to know that her concerns would be considered. The officer's calm and professional manner reassured her that the complaint was being taken seriously, and that it was not just about blame, but about understanding and improvement. After leaving the police station, Karen took a moment to walk through the nearby streets. She reflected on how the process had made her feel more in control. By addressing the incident in a calm and factual manner, she had transformed a negative experience into an opportunity for constructive action. She realized that many people might feel frustrated or upset in similar situations, but might not know how to respond effectively. Karen felt proud of herself for approaching the matter thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Over the next few days, Karen continued with her regular routine, but the incident at the castle remained in her thoughts. She checked her phone periodically, wondering if the police had any updates or if the castle administration had responded. She also took time to reflect on her own behavior, ensuring that she had acted respectfully and responsibly at all times. This reflection helped her maintain a sense of calm and perspective, even though she remained curious about how the situation would unfold. Finally, a phone call came from the police. A courteous officer explained that they had contacted the castle administration and were in the process of reviewing the incident. They asked Karen for any additional details she might recall, such as the exact location of the restricted area or the approximate number of visitors nearby. Karen provided the information carefully, noting that she had already included these details in her written account. The officer thanked her for her cooperation and assured her that the investigation would proceed thoroughly. Karen felt a sense of patience settling over her. She understood that resolving situations like this could take time, especially when it involved multiple parties and careful consideration. Rather than worrying or imagining negative outcomes, she focused on things she could control: her attitude, her preparation, and her communication. She continued to take notes in her notebook, jotting down observations and reflections about her experiences at the castle and her interactions with authorities. A few days later, Karen received an invitation from the castle administration to meet with a representative. The representative wanted to hear her account directly and discuss the incident in person. Karen felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. She wanted to ensure that her perspective was understood, but she also hoped the conversation would be constructive rather than confrontational. She prepared carefully, reviewing her notes and thinking about how to communicate clearly and respectfully. On the day of the meeting, Karen arrived at the castle again, this time through the main entrance, feeling a sense of calm determination. The representative greeted her warmly and led her to a small office within the castle. The room had large windows overlooking the gardens, and the sunlight created a gentle, welcoming atmosphere. Karen felt encouraged by the friendly tone and the professionalism of the staff. During the meeting, Karen explained the incident calmly, describing her feelings and observations without exaggeration. She emphasized that she was not angry but wanted the interaction to be reviewed for fairness and clarity. The representative listened attentively, asking questions about the guard's behavior and the sequence of events. Karen answered honestly, focusing on her experience rather than making assumptions about the guard's intentions. The representative thanked Karen for her thoughtful approach and explained that the castle took visitor feedback seriously. They assured her that the guard's behavior would be reviewed and that staff would be reminded to maintain a professional tone when addressing visitors. Karen appreciated the response. It reassured her that the situation was being taken seriously and that her experience could help improve future interactions for others. After leaving the castle, Karen felt a sense of closure. She realized that addressing the incident calmly and responsibly had transformed a negative experience into a positive outcome. She had learned how to communicate effectively, how to remain composed under stress, and how to turn frustration into constructive action. The process had been empowering, giving her confidence in her ability to handle challenging situations thoughtfully. Over the following days, Karen continued to reflect on the lessons she had learned. She realized that misunderstandings and unexpected challenges were a natural part of life, and that the way she responded could make a significant difference in the outcome. She felt proud of herself for remaining calm, documenting the incident carefully, and engaging respectfully with both the police and the castle administration. Karen also thought about how this experience could help others. She considered sharing her story with friends, highlighting the importance of clear communication, patience, and responsible action in difficult situations. She wanted to encourage others to approach challenges thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively, showing that even uncomfortable experiences could lead to growth and understanding. As the week went on, Karen received confirmation from the police that the review had been completed. They explained that the guards' actions had been within protocol, but that the castle would reinforce the importance of maintaining a professional tone with visitors. Karen felt satisfied with the resolution. She had taken action, expressed her perspective, and contributed to a process that could prevent similar incidents in the future. In the end, Karen's visit to the castle had become more than just a day of sightseeing. It had been an experience of personal growth, reflection, and empowerment. She had faced an unexpected challenge, handled it with composure, and seen the positive results of thoughtful action. The incident with the guard, while initially upsetting, had taught her valuable lessons about communication, patience, and fairness. Karen smiled as she looked out the window that evening, thinking about the journey she had undertaken over the past week. She realized that life was full of small tests, moments that could either frustrate or teach. By choosing reflection, clarity, and respectful action, she had turned a moment of discomfort into an opportunity for growth and understanding. She felt proud of herself and grateful for the lessons she had learned, knowing that these insights would guide her in future experiences. The next week, Karen waited patiently for news from the authorities. She continued with her daily routine, but her mind often wandered back to the castle incident. Although the initial shock had faded, curiosity and anticipation grew. She wanted to know how the investigation was proceeding and what the castle and the police would conclude. Karen reminded herself to stay calm and trust the process, understanding that thorough investigations took time. One morning, she received a call from the police officer who had been handling her complaint. The officer informed her that the castle administration had cooperated fully, and that interviews were being conducted with both the guard and several witnesses who had been present during the incident. Karen listened attentively, feeling a mix of nervousness and relief. She understood that the authorities were taking a careful and fair approach, ensuring that all perspectives were heard before making any decisions. The officer asked if Karen could provide additional details that might help clarify the timeline and the exact position of the restricted area. She thought carefully and gave precise descriptions, recalling the layout of the garden, the location of the stone walls, and the direction she had been walking. She also mentioned the reactions of other visitors she had noticed at the time. By providing clear and factual information, Karen felt she was contributing to a fair and complete understanding of the event. A few days later, Karen was invited to the police station for a brief follow-up interview. The officer explained that the goal was to ensure that every detail had been considered and that the investigation was moving forward smoothly. Karen arrived at the station with her notes in hand, prepared to answer questions calmly and thoughtfully. She was escorted to a small, quiet room where she met the officer and a recorder who would document her statement. Karen began by describing her visit to the castle and the excitement she had felt exploring the gardens, the fountains, and the ancient architecture. She emphasized that she had not intended to enter the restricted area, but had merely been curious about the inner courtyard. She explained how the guard had shouted at her, startling her and causing embarrassment in front of other visitors. Karen made it clear that while she understood the importance of safety rules, she had been concerned about the manner in which the guard had addressed her. The officer asked Karen to describe her feelings in detail. Karen explained that she had felt a mixture of surprise, frustration, and discomfort. She noted that the abruptness of the guard's shout had amplified her embarrassment and made her self-conscious in front of the crowd. At the same time, she acknowledged that she had immediately complied with the guard's instructions, stepping back and moving away from the restricted area. By describing her reactions honestly and calmly, Karen hoped to convey the impact of the incident without exaggeration. Next, the officer asked about witnesses. Karen recalled several other visitors who had been nearby, some of whom had glanced at her in surprise. She could not remember their names, but she described their approximate locations and reactions. The officer thanked her for the detailed information, explaining that it could help corroborate her account and provide additional context for the investigation. Karen felt reassured that her observations were valued and could help create a fair understanding of what had happened. Meanwhile, the castle administration conducted its own interviews with the guard. The guard explained that his actions were consistent with the standard protocols for visitor safety. He had been trained to respond firmly to anyone approaching restricted areas to prevent accidents or damage to historic property. He also mentioned that he had not intended to be rude, but had prioritized the safety of the visitors and the preservation of the castle. The administration noted that the guard's approach was professional according to policy, though they acknowledged Karen's perspective and the emotional impact of the interaction. The investigation also included interviews with other staff members and security personnel. They confirmed that the restricted area was sensitive and that shouting was sometimes used to quickly alert visitors who might unknowingly enter. Several staff members recognized that while shouting could be startling, it was occasionally necessary to prevent accidents. These perspectives helped the authorities understand the guard's intentions and the broader context of safety protocols at the castle. As the days passed, Karen reflected on what she had learned through the process. She realized that understanding multiple perspectives was key to resolving conflicts effectively. The guard's actions, while startling to her, were part of a safety procedure designed to protect visitors and preserve the historic property. At the same time, Her own feelings of embarrassment and frustration were valid and deserved recognition. The investigation seemed to be balancing both viewpoints, which reassured Karen that fairness was possible even in challenging situations. Karen also thought about how the investigation emphasized communication. She realized that small differences in tone, volume, or body language could dramatically affect how messages were received. The guard had acted correctly according to his duties, but the sudden shout had been interpreted by Karen as rudeness. Reflecting on this, she appreciated the importance of clear and respectful communication, especially in situations where safety or rules are involved. She resolved to apply this understanding in her own life, whether dealing with colleagues, friends, or strangers. Several days later, Karen received an official update from the police. The officer explained that after reviewing witness statements, security procedures, and interviews with both Karen and the guard, the investigation was complete. The findings indicated that the guard had acted in accordance with castle policies regarding restricted areas, but the castle administration acknowledged the impact of the shout on Karen and other visitors. They had decided to remind all staff to maintain a calm and professional tone when addressing visitors, even while enforcing rules. Karen felt a sense of relief. The resolution seemed fair and balanced. The guard's adherence to protocol was recognized, while her feelings and perspective were respected. She appreciated that the authorities had taken the time to listen, investigate, and consider both sides carefully. The process had been thorough, transparent, and professional, which reinforced her confidence in the fairness of the system. In the following days, Karen reflected further on the experience. She realized that incidents like these could serve as opportunities for personal growth and learning. The investigation had taught her patience, empathy, and the importance of clear communication. She also recognized that her own actions, remaining calm, documenting the incident, and speaking respectfully, had contributed significantly to the fair outcome. Karen felt proud of herself for handling the situation responsibly. She also began sharing her reflections with friends and family, emphasizing the importance of perspective and understanding. She explained that while the guard's shout had been startling, the investigation had clarified his intentions and the broader context of safety procedures. Karen highlighted that conflicts or misunderstandings did not always have to lead to anger or resentment. Thoughtful action and open communication could lead to constructive results. Karen continued to explore other historical sites and public places, carrying with her the lessons learned from the castle incident. She observed staff interactions, noticed the importance of tone and clarity, and applied these insights in her own communication. She found herself more patient and empathetic, both toward authority figures and fellow visitors. These lessons extended beyond public spaces and became valuable in her personal and professional life as well. A few weeks later, Karen received a formal letter from the castle administration. The letter acknowledged the incident, expressed appreciation for her thoughtful communication, and confirmed that staff had been reminded of the importance of addressing visitors respectfully. The letter also invited her to return to the castle at a future date for a guided tour, free of charge, as a gesture of goodwill. Karen smiled as she read the letter. The gesture felt sincere and demonstrated that even challenging situations could result in positive outcomes. As Karen reflected on the entire experience, she realized how much she had grown. The initial shock and embarrassment had given way to reflection, action, and understanding. She had navigated a challenging situation with patience and professionalism, contributing to a resolution that was fair for everyone involved. The incident had not only enhanced her awareness of public interactions and communication, but had also strengthened her confidence in handling unexpected challenges. By the time she returned to her normal routine, Karen felt a sense of calm and satisfaction. The castle incident had become more than just a memory. It had become a learning experience. She understood the importance of considering multiple perspectives, maintaining composure under stress, and approaching conflicts with respect and clarity. Karen felt empowered by the knowledge that thoughtful action and careful communication could turn difficult moments into opportunities for growth and positive change. Even as she continued her daily life, Karen carried the lessons from the investigation with her. She noticed small interactions more keenly, reflected on her responses, and applied empathy in her communications. The experience had shown her that fairness and understanding often required patience, observation, and thoughtful action. Karen realized that life was filled with unexpected challenges, and that the way she responded could shape the outcomes and the experiences of both herself and others. In the end, Karen's journey through the investigation had reinforced a valuable principle. Conflicts or misunderstandings, no matter how small, could be approached with calmness, honesty, and respect. By doing so, it was possible to reach fair and balanced resolutions, foster understanding, and even create opportunities for personal growth. Karen felt grateful for the experience, knowing that it had taught her lessons she would carry for a lifetime. After weeks of anticipation and careful reflection, Karen finally felt a sense of closure regarding the incident at the castle. The experience had been unusual, stressful, and at times uncomfortable, but it had also taught her lessons she would carry with her for a long time. She realized that the event, though challenging in the moment, had provided her with an opportunity to grow in ways she hadn't expected. The formal letter from the castle administration still rested on her desk. Its words were thoughtful and sincere, acknowledging her concerns and expressing appreciation for the calm and clear way she had communicated. The administration had confirmed that the guards' actions had been in accordance with safety rules, but they had also reminded all staff to speak to visitors in a professional and considerate manner. The letter even included an invitation for Karen to return for a guided tour, free of charge, as a gesture of goodwill. She smiled as she read it again, feeling that the resolution was both fair and thoughtful. Karen reflected on the journey she had undertaken since the initial shout from the guard. She remembered her surprise and embarrassment that day, how quickly the moment had caught her off guard, and how she had struggled to process the situation while standing in front of other visitors. She remembered walking through the castle gardens afterward, trying to regain her composure, and later sitting in the cafe, sipping tea, and considering her options. At the time, the incident had felt overwhelming, but now she could see it as a stepping stone toward understanding herself and the world around her. One of the most important lessons Karen took from the experience was the value of perspective. She realized that the guard had been acting according to rules designed to protect visitors and preserve the castle. His intentions were not to hurt, embarrass, or demean anyone, but to enforce regulations quickly and efficiently. Meanwhile, her own perspective had focused on the immediate emotions of surprise, embarrassment, and frustration. By considering both viewpoints, Karen understood how a single event could be experienced so differently depending on one's role and priorities. Karen also thought deeply about the importance of communication. She realized that tone, volume, and timing could completely change how a message was received. The guard's shout had been startling and uncomfortable, but if it had been delivered in a softer, explanatory tone, the situation might have felt less harsh. At the same time, Karen's calm and respectful approach in responding to the situation had helped her be heard and taken seriously. She felt proud of herself for remaining composed, for documenting her account carefully, and for approaching the authorities thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. The process of filing the complaint and interacting with both the police and the castle administration had also taught Karen the value of patience. She had learned that resolving conflicts, even small ones, took time, careful listening, and structured communication. The initial discomfort of the incident had gradually transformed into a productive process of understanding, investigation, and resolution. Karen found satisfaction in knowing that she had contributed positively to this process, and that her experience might help improve interactions for future visitors. Karen's reflections extended beyond the castle incident itself. She began to think about other areas of her life where misunderstandings or conflicts could arise. She recognized that whether at work, in social settings, or even at home, situations could easily be misinterpreted if communication was unclear or if emotions ran high. The lessons she had learned about calmness, clarity, and perspective became tools she could use in daily life. She felt more confident in her ability to handle unexpected challenges without panic or resentment. In the following days, Karen decided to take a walk through the city, revisiting some of her favorite spots while contemplating the recent experiences. She observed people around her, shopkeepers speaking politely to customers, children laughing and playing, families enjoying parks. She noticed small gestures, like a gentle reminder from a crossing guard or a helpful direction offered by a passerby, and she appreciated the subtle ways communication could shape interactions. Karen reflected on her own communication, noting that the lessons she had learned from the castle incident could make her more considerate, patient, and effective in her interactions. The invitation from the castle encouraged Karen to return, and she decided that she would take them up on it. The opportunity to revisit the castle with a guided tour promised a different experience, one where she could explore the historic site without the previous tension and fully enjoy the beauty and history it offered. She looked forward to seeing areas she had previously missed, learning more about the castle's stories, and viewing the gardens, fountains, and architecture from a fresh perspective. The prospect of returning gave her a sense of anticipation and excitement, replacing the lingering discomfort from the past event. Karen also found herself sharing her story with friends and colleagues. She did not focus on the frustration or embarrassment of the incident itself, but rather on the lessons it had provided. She spoke about the importance of handling challenges thoughtfully, communicating clearly, and considering multiple perspectives before forming judgments. Her friends listened with interest, and many found her insights helpful in understanding how to navigate their own conflicts or misunderstandings. Sharing her story allowed Karen to reinforce the lessons she had learned and to help others see the value in patience and perspective. Over time, the memory of the guard's shout became less about embarrassment and more about personal growth. Karen no longer dwelled on the suddenness or the perceived rudeness. Instead, she focused on how she had responded and what she had learned from the experience. She recognized that challenges, while uncomfortable, often contained valuable lessons if approached thoughtfully. This realization gave her a sense of empowerment. She had turned a negative moment into a constructive journey of reflection and action. Karen also appreciated the professionalism and fairness of the authorities involved. Both the police and the castle administration had taken her concerns seriously, listened attentively, and considered all perspectives before concluding their review. She was impressed by the structured process, the attention to detail, and the effort to maintain fairness. The experience gave her greater confidence in institutions and the people responsible for handling public interactions responsibly. As weeks turned into months, Karen returned to the castle for the guided tour. This time, she felt relaxed and curious, free from the tension of the previous visit. The tour guide explained the history of the castle in detail, sharing fascinating stories about kings, queens, and the architectural features that had been built centuries ago. Karen marveled at the gardens, the fountains, and the grand halls, appreciating the artistry and care that had gone into maintaining the historic site. The experience was enriching, and she felt grateful that she had not let the earlier incident prevent her from fully enjoying the castle. During the tour, Karen noticed the guards standing at their posts, vigilant yet calm. She observed their professionalism and dedication, understanding that their role was challenging and required balancing authority with approachability. Karen reflected on how her perception of the guard had evolved, from surprise and embarrassment to understanding and respect. She realized that everyone had a role to play, and that rules, even when strictly enforced, were designed to protect and maintain order. The guided tour reinforced Karen's sense of growth. She had learned patience, perspective, and effective communication through the incident, and now she was able to enjoy the castle fully, appreciating both the history and the present-day efforts to preserve it. The experience had come full circle, from the shock of the guard's shout to the satisfaction of understanding and closure. Karen felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had navigated a challenging situation with maturity and insight. As she walked through the castle gardens after the tour, Karen paused to take photographs, write notes in her journal, and reflect on her journey. She realized that the incident had taught her more than she initially imagined. It had shown her the importance of self-control, clarity in communication, empathy for others, and the power of patience. She felt that these lessons would continue to guide her in many areas of life, from personal relationships to professional challenges. By the end of the day, Karen returned home with a sense of peace and fulfillment. She had transformed an uncomfortable encounter into an experience of growth, understanding, and empowerment. She had learned to navigate authority, express concerns respectfully, and consider multiple perspectives before forming judgments. Most importantly, she had discovered that challenges, no matter how small or unexpected, could lead to valuable insights if approached thoughtfully. Karen smiled as she placed her camera and notebook on her desk. The castle incident, which had once caused frustration and embarrassment, had become a meaningful story of personal growth. She felt proud of her patience, resilience, and ability to handle the situation responsibly. Looking back, she realized that life was full of unexpected moments, each carrying lessons if she chose to see them. With this mindset, Karen felt prepared to face any future challenge with calmness, clarity, and confidence.